Diego, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm so excited about our conversation today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, so you have first of all, on Lobos 1707 napkins, which I think is pretty badass. That's pretty fantastic. So on the napkin, you've written your paper napkin, which is Defy Expectations. Why did you share that with me today?
Define expectations is everything that makes Lobos today. And it made it from the beginning. It's in the liquid is what we represent. It's really everything about what we are. And it has to be that way. Because when you compete against the big guys that have, 60 times your budget in marketing, probably 30 times the amount of people working with them and that kind of thing, you have to define the expectations, because the expectation is you're a small brand, you will die, you will, there's no there. So it has to be, everything has to be define the expectations, define what it was meant to be. And in the case of Lobos specifically, from day one, right? Tequila is not meant to be in sherry. Spanish actor and director lives in New York, is not meant to start a tequila brand. A kid from Akron is not meant to be a billionaire investor that's made the biggest points and world records in basketball in history. A guy from a small town in Austria, Schwarzenegger, is not meant to be a bodybuilder, best actor in the world, and also the governor of the fourth GDP in the world. I think that came together, but it goes also to a lot of our president, COO Carlos. He's a Cuban immigrant. He run in the distributor and created all the digital platform for one of our main distributors, and then now he runs with me Lobos. So it really runs through the whole thing in the company, and that is who we are, and hopefully that'll be the legacy that we leave behind.
I think it's really cool. So, I mean, let's tell the origin story, because I think the origin story of Lobos 1707 it starts this idea of defying expectations, right? I mean, it kind of came up out of a family tradition, but it's unusual in its own, right? It's not the normal family recipe, right? So, tell us the story of where it came from.
So, I mean, I always say, which is funny, and people think it's a marketing line, this was never meant to be a company. It just started out of passion, started out of, myself being in New York. You go 3-4 months without a job when you're, in the arts. Directing and acting, sometimes you get dry moments, and you go 3 or 4 months, and being the sort of, antsy person that I am and wanting to put that passion and love. I was talking to my cousin once, and he still works for my family. Family does a lot of sherries and wines and that kind of thing in Spain. I wanted nothing to do with it. I'm an artist, that kind of thing. There's a great Hemingway quote that I love, which is, "We're all artists until rent is due." But this was not the case. It was just a fun place to put my love. And I was talking to my cousin, and I was like, "Hey, I have this thing, and I don't know where to put it." And he's like, "Well, why don't you've had this history of, you've grown up around, sherries and makings and wineries and that kind of thing. Why don't you put that knowledge with the storytelling that you love to do into good use and put it all together?" I thought that was really interesting, but I was like, is there a story here worth telling? Which is the number one thing, right? Is there something worth telling? I had one of those things that your parents tell you is like, you had a great grandfather that went from Spain to Mexico, and you know what I mean? And you were like, well, that would be useful for absolutely nothing. But mothers know best, right? And when I started researching, the first thing that came to mind, it was like, his name was actually my exact name, Diego Osorio, which it was like, that was the first thing of like, oh, wow, that seems like a sign if I've ever seen one. And then what he did was very simple. He traveled in the 1700s to Mexico. And at the time, you would travel with a lot of the things that you loved, right? Just because, you would put, your favorite things. And one of them was the sherry that his family was making. So he traveled in barrels, because at the time you would travel in barrels. And when time was done, he filled it up with the local spirit, agave liquor, what we know today as tequila. I thought that was a really cool story. And also, I'm not going to fool anyone. I also knew that's what the whiskeys and bourbons of the world were going. And I've seen my family sell barrels to those kind of things. And I was like, well, no one's ever done it in tequila. So I thought, is there, that seemed like a wide space. And I had a barrier of entry that is complicated to break, which is the knowledge of sherry using and buying sherry barrels, which is kind of complicated. So I went to my family's winery and I sold 20 barrels. And being the black sheep that I am, they were like, just do whatever the hell you want, just leave us alone and that kind of thing. Took the master distiller from Spain with me in a paid vacation. And that was the most important part. I always say that I joke around with the Spanish master distiller coming over, but the friction, and that's to your point, defining expectations, the friction between the Spanish master distiller in Mexico, the Mexican master distiller, and myself, the three very hard-headed, opinionated Latin men defending what they thought it was true, led to what Lobos is today. It took us 326 iterations to all agree. But that, again, that's the defining expectations. I had no time construction, no problem, no one to answer to. So it was literally just my own money, my own time. I always say every time the big companies, give me accolades or invite me over to talk about Lobos, they always say, so incredible what you've done. I was like, you would have fired me 3 times before I had finished. There's no way I would have been able to do this. So that's kind of to your point of expectations, right? Like in a big company, you have 6 months to do this, $300,000 to go and do it. And if you're not done, you're fired, right? So the expectations for me was, I just want to do this to the best of my abilities. And after that, on the subject of investing, I realized I invested way more money than I had on a passion project, and it was defeating all the purposes of this. And then I decided to do a small round, and that's when things got a little out of hand, and here we are.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to get to that in a second. But
Yeah.
I love, first of all, I love the passion that's at the heart of this, right? The passion, but it wasn't blind. Like you weren't blind. You took all of the experience and expertise that made you successful in the arts, right? As in production and acting, you took that and knew that you needed to have a good story, and you built it from there. You built it. It's like a foundational block. It's not like you forgot what you were doing before and reinvented something else. You brought all of those things with you into this new area. And I think that's really interesting. Was that intentional, or is it just like you couldn't help it? That's the way you think.
Well, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. Like if it was intentional or not. I just in me, I don't take audience for idiots. And I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people take audience or consumers, they underestimate their knowledge, their capability, and their hunger for knowing more and knowing what's right. So for me, the story couldn't be made in a boardroom. It couldn't have been, because those things, one out of whatever hit, but most of the times consumers read through I don't know if I'm allowed to swear or not, but read through the bullshit and just don't care. You know what I mean? So for me, it was really important that we were going to tell something that it felt authentic and true to me, and that it was real, based on something real.
Do you have that philosophy with your art too, like that the story's got to be real and you're discerning? Because it's like in arts, because you go so many days between paychecks sometimes, you can end up compromising a little bit, right? And it's tough to be uncompromising. I mean, you talked about Schwarzenegger earlier on, and he was very uncompromising in the roles that he picked. He was very discerning about the ones that he thought were going to be good for him and the ones that were not. But that's not normal, right? A lot of people are just like, on call, I'll take anything.
Yeah. I think for me, the most important thing is, it's actually funny that we're here talking about expectations. A lot of people ask me, what do you think of that movie, right? And I'm like, it gave me exactly what I was expecting, or more. Mm-hmm. That for me is a good movie. If I walk into a product, and by the way, the same thing with a product, right? I cannot pay, our product is ultra luxury, right? Our Hoven is $45. That is not a small amount of money. So if I'm paying $45 for something, you better give me everything it's worth, right? I want a good bottle, I want a good liquid, I want a good story, authentic, I want to know what's in it, like that kind of thing. The same thing with a movie. Like nowadays, a movie ticket is close to $20. So like if I'm going to see a Tom Cruise film and that kind of thing, yeah, it may be more, on the cheesy side or not, that kind of thing, but he delivers every time, so like that's something. Then there's other films that I was like, you can't sell me this and then not give it to me and or here or there. Like, so for me, spoon feeding the audience, treating audience like they don't know, and that kind of thing, it's something that is just in core. And I treat people that way as well. Like, in business, you have to let people do their own thing and don't treat them like idiots, and understand that they've been hired for a job. And my biggest thing is I know what I don't know. So I came to know from you. So let's go.
Yeah. You said, Tom Cruise always delivers, which is really interesting. But you're talking about defying expectations. So the idea is by respecting your audience, you can defy their expectations because you understand them. And I want to go back to the fact that you said it was never meant to be a company, but you're really, really well thought out when you think about your product, because the liquid was only one of the three things you mentioned, just like rattling it off on top of your head. You talked about the bottle, the liquid, the story, because people aren't buying, they're buying an experience for $45, right? When you're buying an ultra premium product, it's conspicuous consumption. There has to be something more. You have to defy their expectations. I love this idea. Like how hard was it to land on the bottle? How hard was it to get the bottle and the story and the liquid all right and together in synergy?
To your point, like someone like me that starts a company out of passion, that it was meant to be something to give to his friends, should not have its own bottle. Like that, to your point of expectations, like it should, like most companies out there have things that you buy off the shelf. Like the idea of like designing your own bottle is like out of, like, you're crazy. And I just didn't want it. I wanted to do it, because I love designing, I love storytelling. And for me, the bottle is such a key element, because like it's the biggest gateway to getting to the liquid, right? So like you have to have a good bottle, because it's like it's packaging 101, right? So it for me, the bottle was so much to tell the story with. And if you get the bottle here, it had to start with a human-esque form, because most people haven't designed something from scratch, and it's actually really hard, because you have to start on a blank page, and bottles have been done in every shape and form, right? So what is the direction you're going to go? So I knew certain limitations that I wanted. I wanted a human-esque form. I also can't draw to save my life, so I have to 3D print everything, which is something. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, which that meant I had to hold the bottle, which is great. So that means it holds really well, which I love that about our bottle. So it's all those little details. I knew I wanted to give homage to that Diego Osorio that brought me here. So his coat of arms would have had two wolves in it. Wolves meaning Lobos in Spanish, that gave the name to the brand. He would have been in Mexico from 1702 to 1714. 1707 is the most beautiful number in the middle, and my sister's birthday as well. So I thought it was a nice, it was a nice, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's little things like that, just they keep on giving you where you want to land, hopefully.
And so as the little guy, and like you're playing in a gigantic ocean, and I know, I've done that. I've played in renewable fuels where you're playing up against the big sisters in that industry, and man, they just roll over in bed and kill you.
Yeah.
So being the little guy, taking care of the details becomes the place that you can defy expectations, right? Because they can't take care of the details the way, or not that they can't. They more could take care of the details, but they won't, because they put a time limit and an ROI that is defined in a boardroom and not attached to the lab. And you were attached to the lab, like you're picking up the bottle and feeling it, right? Is that
Absolutely
part of the secret sauce behind what you're
you
saying?
you have to your point of the audience, you have to give them something that no one else will give them, and the big guys, they have a bottom line, they have teams, they, a lot of them are publicly traded, and they have to show results, and and these things take investment and time. That's why they acquire more than they, create in-house, because, we're able to do. And the grassroots is really hard. Like I wish I knew what I know now. I might have not never done it. You know what I mean? Like, it is really, really hard, and it's one bottle at a time, and one, distributor and one team, and it's hard for them to do that because they
Isn't
have
that
a
true?
big, yeah.
It's so true. Like, I don't want to leave this point. If you knew what it was going to take, you probably wouldn't have done it, right? Like, isn't that true of all the great creation? Like, we don't know how far it's going to take us, but we're committed to the next step, right? Committed to the next step and committed to the next step. Now, you glossed over some random guy from Ohio that may have done something in a sport with a ball. How did you get this random guy interested in tequila?
So I always love telling this story because it tells you a lot about how he thinks and how amazing he is inside and outside of the court. I met him.
Who are we talking about, by the way?
LeBron James.
All right.
We have the pleasure to have LeBron James as our investor, and among Arnold and Jimmy Iovine and other people that I'm very, very honored and humbled that they would decide to support this project. It came to be, in the arts, I met Maverick Carter and Paul Wachter, who in LA, who are part of LeBron's team. They knew I was doing this, I was raising, and LeBron's a very big tequila addict. Like, he just loves tequila. He goes from wine to tequila, and that's his poison of choice, like I like to say. And he called me one day, and he was like, "Hey, dude, do you remember me? I'm LeBron James." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I remember you. I think I haven't forgotten." And he said, "Hey, I only have 2-week holiday this year because we just finished shooting Space Jam, and I'm going into training again. Do you mind if we try it? Do you mind? Is it any good? Do you think it's any good?" I was like, "Well, I've literally spent 2.5 years of my life trying to get it here. I think it's pretty good." And then I got to see him, and I was not nervous just because I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna go there. We're gonna try. We're gonna shoot the shit, and it'll be fine." You know what I mean? Like, it's a great guy.
And you're having some tequila, right? Can't be that bad.
Tequila. Walk through the door. Every competitor tequila brand that you can think of was there on ice with a bartender waiting for us to try it all at the same time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What did that do to you?
I got nervous. That was the first thing. I was like, oh, this will show you how he thinks. It was like, yeah, we're going to have a great time, but we're here for what we're here. You know what I mean? Like, that's how the guy thinks. And Maverick was there, and Paul was there, and we tried it, and he wanted to know the vision. He wanted to know the storytelling. He wanted to know what I would do if we launched it and that kind of thing. And we spent, a whole day together and drinking, and, eventually we had a good time, but it was like, so why do you think this is different to this competitor? Why do you think this, that kind of thing? And it really was competitor bartenders. Like, so what cocktail do you think? And funny story, which is actually talking about defining expectations. Most people don't know this, or they're shocked when they find out. I'm actually terrible with cocktails because the whole point of this thing is I love drinking it on the rocks, and I spend a lot of time so people can drink it on the rocks. But there's some great mixologists there that just elevate that and take it to another level. But so, that's how he thinks about it. And then by the end of it, I'm like, great. And he was like, "I love it. Love your vision. Let's try to figure it out. Let's try to do this together." I'm like, great for us, right? Because he's also know of, like, his 4 brothers, and, and how he does business among his friends. And I was like, and he was like, no, we're taking over the world. We're going big. I don't do anything small. And I was like, oh, here we go. Okay.
Put your seatbelt on. You know what? People need to hear this, because this is really critical. How important were the 2.5 years, 326 iterations, all the hand touching of the bottle, all the mistakes, the turnabouts, the good days and the bad days? How important were those to that moment when you got there and all of those other tequilas were there on ice, ready to go? Like, it feels like you needed to go through that to become the expert you were. and you could speak about it at a level of detail that defied everyone's expectations. Like, I don't think if you didn't blow them away, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Absolutely not. It's everything, but I think it's everything because the truth is easy to tell. I also think it's everything because luck is the mix of opportunity and experience, and having been preparation. So I love that definition of luck, because it's, if you weren't prepared, it doesn't matter if LeBron James calls you and it's in the right time. Because there was a lot of luck. There was at the time that LeBron was discovered tequila about a year before that. He loved the idea. He's drinking it. He's trying to find what he likes. And then, he's the kind of guy that wants to invest and wants to invest in everything that he feels passionate about. So I walked in the right time. If I would have done it a year later, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation. So there is that element of luck, right? And I'm not saying that everything is based on LeBron's investment, but that was definitely a huge trigger of it, right? And if I would have not know what I know today, it would have been probably impossible. They would have read through it right away. And also, but the same thing talking to you, I think the truth is easy to tell, before we got on air, you asked me, is there anything that you don't want to talk about, and that kind of thing. I'm very comfortable because there's nothing to hide here. There's no that day that, we lied about this and that kind of thing. It's so easy to just sit down and just tell the truth.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's really, yeah. So LeBron James was an accelerant for sure, but you had done a lot of work to get to that stage. And that's what I don't want to flirt over. I think a lot of people will hear that. And I love the quote, right? I think it was Jefferson who said, most people miss it when opportunity knocks because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. And you did the work, right? You put on the overalls, you did the work, and you did the work for 2.5 years of iteration and experimentation. And that took passion and energy to get to that place, right? So how has the world changed for you? Yeah, I mean, I think my big question is, like, LeBron is a GOAT, right? You don't get that status because you don't bring that to everything you do. The one thing I've known about competitors is they have a mindset of focus and energy. Like you said, right? You were there to assess tequila. He was going to do the research. He was going to assess it all the way through. What lessons have you learned from him that you've then applied in your Lobos 1707 journey together?
I mean, the lessons from LeBron is, like, I've never seen anyone be so prepared to everything he shows up. Like, I every time we do a shoot, we work with directors or producers. I used to direct the first few videos, and we actually worked with a new director on the last one that's coming out pretty soon in the next few weeks. And we worked with this amazing director, and I was telling her, it's like, he's going to be early, he'll be prepared, he'll know the script, he won't need a lot of rehearsal, and he'll be ready to go. And he goes, yeah, I've worked with the biggest actors in the world. I'm like, he's different. He's just different. Like, there was one time that we shot a photo of his house. He was texting me at 2 a.m. after a game. Hey, I think this is how we will do it, that kind of thing. By the way, come at 7. And I'm like, it's 2 a.m. And he goes, yeah, I have to be on the road by 9:15. He went for a 12-day, and the guy's just like on the preparation and the thought, and he calls me at like 2 a.m. Hey, I'm in Chicago after a game. We came to have dinner at this restaurant. This is the photo of the restaurant manager that would love to have Lobos. What? The other lesson, the biggest lesson, to be honest, I don't know if it's the biggest because there's no point of really put them in comparison, but Arnold, to me, gave me a huge lesson. I've told the story a few times, but we do the shout outs where, Arnold does the shout outs to, like, people that help the brand and that kind of thing. So he was gracious enough to give me some of his time to go over at his house and shoot the shout outs. And it was Christmas. So I get to his house, and I put a chair underneath the Christmas tree, and I have a teleprompter and the camera, and I'm like, great, he'll be down. I'll be done in half an hour, and I'm out of his hair. He can carry on with his day. Comes down and he looks at me and he goes, Diego, what is this? And I'm like, What do you mean?
That's
He
a pretty
goes,
good Arnold. That's a pretty good
I know.
Arnold.
I have never done it to him, so hopefully he won't see this interview. But and he sits down and he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, this, you just sit down, I'll be out of your hair, you do the lines, I'll be gone. And he goes, no, we'll do each one personal. You tell me why each person has helped Lobos and why this matters to him. I'm like, but Arnold, there's like 25 names. You know what I mean? Like that will take some time. You know, if you just saying the name, it's enough. It's you, it's Arnold. You know what I mean? Like it's enough. And he sat me down and he said, Diego, enough is never enough.
Enough is never enough.
We spent the whole morning together. He went to the gym. I was very excited because I thought, oh, I'm going to get to work out with Arnold. He was like, oh, no, I'm working out. You're filming and you're working. But he gave every video its own importance, why it mattered. He wanted to know how long they've been helping. And then the lines that I gave him meant nothing. He completely improvised and did his whole thing.
Isn't that like I've got goosebumps on my goosebumps. Well, first of all, you're speaking about people that are idolized everywhere, and I personally, I mean, the second Arnold put out his 77 ideas for his 77th birthday, I was all over it, read it right away. So I mean, these are legends, but isn't it incredible that your napkin, Defy Expectations, this core principle value that has been part of your life, is so aligned with LeBron, is so aligned with Arnold? Enough is never enough sounds an awful lot like Defy Expectations, doesn't it?
Without a doubt. But that's what I mean. Like, I think that's why I think it's so much in Lobos Define Expectations, because by the way, everyone that works at the brand is the same way. They just, they're not, the name is not known like that way, but they defined expectations in some shape or form and along the way. So it really is something that we can own that no one else can own.
Man, I think that we could go on for hours because I love your story and your passion is intoxicating. I'm sure Lobos is intoxicating as well, but your passion is intoxicating, Diego. I am so honored to have had this time with you. Thank you. Maybe we'll bring you back again sometime. What do you think?
Anytime. I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.